Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to our Lord of the Rings read-through series. Today, we're joined by friend of the pod, Claire, to discuss the second book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Two Towers. This is my personal favorite book in the series, just because I feel like so much goes on in this book. You know, you got Ents, you got Saruman, you've got Smeagol, you've got Helm's Deep. It's all there. And Claire was the ideal guest to have for this. We get into some really good, deep lore conversations. We also talk about the concept of eucatastrophe and how that relates to Tolkien's Christian background, as well as, you know, just how he frames the story and the good things that happen to characters in it. And we also talk about whether or not orcs are real people, the question you've been dying to have answered. So this is a great episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. As always, we hope you enjoy the conversation.
Ben, I do want to say I was a little confused when you said you wanted to do an episode on the Twin Towers, like at this point in the recording schedule. I was like, well, we just did Fellowship of the Ring, and you were like, we got to do an episode on the Twin Towers. And I was like, Ben, look at the recording schedule. Like, this is going to come out in October. Like, it's not very never forget of us to do our, like, 9/11 episode in October.
Oh my God.
Well, John, I'm glad you brought that up because I remember when this movie came out, just like having like being like the Twin Towers versus the Two Towers. And, you know, as we'll talk about, there's more than one tower in this book, and hopefully we will remember all of them. So
there's too many towers.
Yeah, there's the Twin Towers in New York City. You're talking about the movie with Nicolas Cage where he's the firefighter?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, folks. I don't remember 9/11, so I can't never forget because I never remembered.
Oh, wow. You're an infant. Okay.
All right. Well, enough with the cold open. You're listening to the Infinite Library podcast. I'm your host, Ben.
And I'm your host, John.
And as John alluded to, we are covering part 2 in Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. And I'm really happy to have our guest today. She's a great scholar, as well as being one of the few people I know to have read Tolkien secondary scholarship, which is why I was like, she's got to come on the show. Welcome to the show, Claire.
You make me sound extremely cool, actually.
Well, when you do podcast intros, it's always good to kind of be like, hey, this person's very cool. So
I was being sarcastic. Only not cool people read Tolkien secondary scholarship.
Oh, well.
Well, that means there's 3 non-cool people on this podcast.
Yeah, no, I guess I spent my week doing the wrong thing, man.
So did we all.
Yeah, so Claire, what is your sort of experience with Tolkien? Do you remember when you started reading him? What's your vibe overall? Because John and I talked a little bit about this on the last episode, but interested to hear your background with the big man.
Yeah, now that you're in the fellowship, we gotta know where you're coming from.
Wow, this fellowship has women in it?
Yeah. Oh, also, what race are you in Middle Earth?
Yeah, what faction?
That was a question we did last episode too.
Well, it's a weird question for one. Okay. Starting with what race are you? But
well, yeah, but I mean that's the terminology he uses.
Yeah. Which one has libraries? Because I feel like that's where I want to hang out in Middle Earth. Gondor has libraries, right?
Yeah, Gandalf goes to the Gondor library,
archives,
and that's where
right?
he cracks the code. That's when he's like, oh, Bilbo's ring is the ring.
Yeah.
But the elves probably also have libraries.
Yeah, whoever's got all the archives, I would probably hang out there the most.
Do you think the dwarves have libraries?
I can
probably
see that.
Not, no.
They still etch things on stone.
Yeah. But then also, when I was introduced to Tolkien, I was in my horse girl phase.
Oh,
So I was a big fan of Rohan from the very
you're
beginning.
nice.
one
Okay.
man
You
of the mark.
yeah, big Aowen stan from the very beginning. So yeah, kind of a couple of options there. I don't know.
I mean, I think being part of Rohan would be cool because you could just ride around on your horses and hang out in those like thatched roofs, as well as
it's awkward. It's awkward because they famously don't write books. So
yeah. John has remarked a lot of the culture of Lord of the Rings is like oral, like passing on stories as opposed to writing stuff down. And John mentioned if the dwarves had libraries and they were on stone, you had to carry your stone books around, which would be not great. So
the dwarves never tire. They're used to hard labor and great tasks.
That doesn't work for me because I don't lift. So
okay.
But
we never canonically see Gimli lifting, so maybe they don't need to.
Yeah, they're just born Jack. That would be cool. Yeah,
that would be pretty sweet. Well, so my introduction to Tolkien, I actually don't know how old I was. My dad read The Hobbit out loud to us when I was like, I don't know, 5. It was before I was in school. Because I remember like being in the park during the day while he was reading aloud to us. And I remember him telling us, so like from a teaching your children literacy standpoint, this is a brilliant move. I remember him telling us there's a sequel to The Hobbit, but you can't read it yet. You have to wait till you're older. It was like making it this very big special thing that you have to wait for. And
that's cool.
That you have to age into. And so I was like, oh, am I old enough to read The Lord of the Rings yet? He's like, no, not yet. Can't have it yet. I remember reading it when I was 8 because that was the year the extended DVD box set was released.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And my parents bought it for the family as like a Christmas gift. And then they put it away and they said, nobody can watch it yet because Claire hasn't finished reading the books. And she can't watch the movies until she has read the books. And my sister was really mad because she had seen all the films because she had read them. She's a couple of years older than me. And she was so mad because she wanted to watch all the extended movies. And she was being told, you can't have this very special present because Claire hasn't finished the books yet. And so I remember during Christmas break of that year, this was in 2004, she sat on the arm of the chair, the recliner, and watched me turn every single page of the Fellowship of the Ring.
Just with like tented fingers. Like,
like monitoring my progress through the Fellowship of the Ring.
That's great.
And then as soon as I finished it, she was like, well, wait, no, we can't watch it yet because they moved a scene from the Two Towers into the end of the Fellowship of the Ring. So you have to read that first. And so she ran out of the room and she got the Two Towers off of my dad's bookshelf.
Wow.
And then ran back into the room with the Departure of Boromir open and like thrust it into my hand.
Just like here. Yeah.
And then watched me read that too to make sure I finished it. And then we all got to go watch Fellowship of the Ring together. Like that. So it was 8-year-old me, like responsible for the family's happiness.
Well, and like you were saying, that's a pretty good move to encourage literacy in your family to make it like everyone has to read these books until we can go see the movies. So yeah.
Well, and it was also like a point of pride in my elementary school that I read Lord of the Rings, but all those other kids were only reading Harry Potter, and aren't I super smart and special? Like,
yeah.
So, and like obviously at 8 years old, I wasn't like picking up a lot of stuff that was happening in the story. I was just being like, wow, there's elves and hobbits, and isn't this fun?
Yeah.
So I've read it multiple times since then. I used to read it every year, like during Christmas break.
Nice.
I haven't done that in a while just because life, but I might start doing that again.
They're long. It takes a minute.
They're long. Yeah.
Well, and when John suggested we do this, I was thinking about, people who read it every year, because I feel like the fall, I had a Shakespeare teacher in undergrad who said he reread it every fall. So also I like
Shakespeare.
Or, the Shakespeare teacher said he would reread Lord of the Rings every fall. I guess he would. I don't know how often you would reread Shakespeare. Probably a lot, but he was a former military man, so it was very like regimented. It was an interesting class. But I like that you brought up the Harry Potter comparison, though, because I told John last time that I think I read the third book first because there was only one set of 3 books at my grade school library. And so 2 other boys checked out Fellowship and Two Towers. So I read Return of the King first. So, yeah, I think.
No spoilers.
Yeah. Important decisions in literacy development for children. So.
Do you remember, did your edition do the thing that like my current edition does where it the page count just keeps going?
Yeah, because I opened
you started the book on like page like 726.
Yeah, because that's how I remember. Because I remember opening page 700 and going like, "Whoa!" Like as however old I was. Like, what? Yeah, exactly. Just being shocked. So
I remember that the edition that we had like pictures from the movies on it, and I don't remember. So like. I remember there was a picture of Gandalf the White on the back of one of them. But so I like had indicators that Gandalf maybe wasn't finished in the story, even though he dies, in the first book, I was like, but wait, there's another picture of Gandalf and I've never seen him look like that before.
Yeah.
He's probably coming back, right?
That feels very of a piece with the book itself, where they keep seeing this old man following them.
Yeah.
And they're like, who's this old man? And it's obviously Gandalf, but they just can't tell until he's like, I'm Gandalf.
Well, and they're like, it might be Saruman, but it's definitely Gandalf. Yeah. So,
except for like the one time that it is Saruman, probably.
Again, maybe that was like more of a twist. Maybe that played better like before all the movies and stuff, and you kind of know everything that happens before you read the books. But
my college roommate read The Lord of the Rings for the first time a couple of years ago, and she was like enough removed from fandom culture that she did not know any of that stuff. And I remember she called me after she read the Fellowship, or like while she was reading Fellowship after Gandalf died, and she was just like so upset. She was like, Gandalf died. And like I was sitting there going, oh my god, I didn't know you didn't know that. I didn't know you didn't know this plot twist. And I was just sitting there going, don't say anything. Don't
say anything. He just comes back like 50 pages later. He just comes back like 50 pages later.
So I was just like, I know, isn't that so terrible? I'm so sorry. Wow.
Wow.
So yeah. And then like, 2 weeks later, she calls me again going, how did you not tell me? And like, just so betrayed.
Okay, so let me explain what a Maiar is.
Yeah.
So
how much more do you want here?
Yeah, I want to jump in on the Gandalf thing, but we should maybe just do a brief plot rundown just so we don't get held up. So feel free to jump in if I forget stuff, because I am somewhat bad at plot rundowns. But the Two Towers opens basically as soon as we left off. Boromir dies valiantly defending the hobbits from a band of Saruman's orcs. They kidnap Merry and Pippin and basically start taking them to Isengard. Legolas
a clip here.
Oh yeah, guard. Yeah, so they're taking the hobbits to Isengard. Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas follow them. As we've just been saying, they're followed by a mysterious old man. The old man turns out to be miraculously Gandalf the White, reincarnated somehow, which I hope we'll talk about. Then they basically, spoilers. Then they proceed to Rohan, at which point they rouse. Well, they run into some people from Rohan, but they proceed to Rohan to rouse King Theoden from his stupor that I believe was given to him by Wormtongue, who is a sort of shady looking person who works for Saruman. They throw Wormtongue out. They rouse Theoden. They go to Helm's Deep. They defend Helm's Deep from invading bands of Saruman's orcs. Meanwhile, Merry and Pippin have escaped the orcs that they were following, and they link up with the Ents, who are these great tree people, herder of trees, I believe they describe themselves as. They help defend Helm's Deep, at which point the invading army is smashed. Then they go to meet up at Isengard. The Ents are there. Saruman is hiding in his tower. Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas meet up with Merry and Pippin in a really great scene, which I was going to say in the beginning, imagine we're all like smoking a fat round of Longbottom Leaf in the ruins of Isengard. Listeners, if you can visualize in your mind, we're just chilling at Isengard. So Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli finally meet up with Merry and Pippin. They're okay. They recount what happens. There's a great scene with Saruman. At which point then Saruman throws down a Palantir because he's pissed off at being sort of undone by the Ents. And then basically Pippin looks into it, gets freaked out, and Gandalf is like, we need to go to Gondor. And they take the Palantir and Pippin with them. And then I can't remember what Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn are going to do at the end of the first book. I know there's some suggestion of where they're going to end up, but I can't remember it right now.
Are they going to Dunharrow? They're like preparing for war now, right?
Yeah. That's got to be it, because I know where it ends up going, but I guess they're gonna like do that. I will say that I feel like that end book ends in a really tense way, where like the Nazgul is like flying overhead, and it's just like, you know, what the hell is that? And then like we're going to Gondor basically. Then in part 2, we catch up with Frodo and Sam, and they're basically going to Mordor, and they meet up with the big man himself, Smeagol. And basically they make their way towards Mordor and through a series of sort of trials involving Smeagol leading them through the Dead Marshes, Smeagol experiencing his split personality with Gollum and about how he wants the ring. The relationship between Smeagol, Sam, and Frodo is established. Then they run into Faramir, Boromir's brother, who breaks Frodo the news. Faramir helps them basically get through the like nice part of Mordor, which we could talk about. I know it's from a different part, but I was thinking in my head as like the nice part of Mordor. Anyway, so they meet up with Faramir. Then Smeagol and Gollum, the treachery of Smeagol kind of comes to the fore, at which point he tells them, I know a shortcut to get past Minas Morgul, which is one of the, we could say the third tower. And that shortcut leads to basically Shelob, the giant spider, at which point Frodo is somewhat killed, not really. Sam basically finds out this way later and is like, they've captured Frodo. I need to go find Frodo after being like stunned by Shelob. And it ends
He's
sort of in the same spot.
dead.
Yeah, he's only mostly dead.
He's not dead yet.
Yeah, and it's a great scene of just Sam like realizing like, oh shit. So another great tense like ending at the end of book 3. Any plot stuff I missed out in that? I sort of drove by a couple of things, but any other plot stuff you wanted to add?
I feel like you hit the major beats.
Okay.
We'll get into it. But
You're the
we'll get into
here.
it. Yeah. Okay. So now we're untethered to talk about themes. So where do you want to start? I kind of want to start with Gandalf's resurrection, unless we want to start somewhere else.
I have a question actually, and I don't know if either of you guys know this. Do you guys know, were these all published like at the same time, or was there gaps between each one's release?
So I am of the opinion that I think they were all published on the same year, but in like separate installments. So I think there was just 3 volumes. I think they were all published in 1954.
Because I just don't know a lot about like how publishing worked back then. And obviously this was kind of a unique, like there weren't a lot of like, this is the first like fantasy novel series. I just found myself thinking about kind of how interesting structurally it is that the book continues like this conceit that it is all one book in terms of like keeping the page count consistent throughout. We go right from like the last page of Fellowship right into the first page of Two Towers. And it's just continues. Like you could theoretically like put them all in one book and you wouldn't have to change any of the formatting. And I think that's interesting.
If I remember right, he envisioned it being published as one book, and the publisher was like, my dude, that is like 900 pages. What are you doing? And so they made him split it up. And then it was released kind of like you said over the course of a year. They split it into
that does help, because it's one of those things where like I, as someone who reads a lot of fantasy, as I'm reading through this, I'm thinking about like, what does this do differently for better or worse than kind of like its successors? Because obviously this goes forward to be like the template for a lot of fantasy. And I think something that is interesting here is each book does not really feel like it's telling a kind of complete story on its own, like the cliffhanger that like he leaves us on in the 2 books of this book, because each book kind of has its own cliffhanger. Like that would be incredibly frustrating as a reader if it's like, oh, there was a cliffhanger in book 3 and then a cliffhanger in book 4, and now I have to wait like potentially years for like the next installment, like you might with like you know, like a Game of Thrones or something like that, which obviously is a book with a whole host of other problems we don't need to get into besides the release schedule. But I do think that those books tend to kind of end more cleanly than this feels like it ends. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think it I don't know how much Tolkien was consciously doing this, but I feel like we talked about it in the first one. It's very much like danger, safety, danger. And it feels like this first part of the Two Towers is just like essentially like a detective foot chase, like leading into a battle. And there's almost like no safety until they end up at Isengard and get to smoke weed and talk about what happened. And then there's like the kind of safety danger structure in the second half. But I feel like he's almost already toying with how to tell the story, and whether or not, John, it was like consciously like cliffhanger suspense building. It feels like he's trying to like do slightly different things with how like events happen.
Well,
so,
you know, something I thought was really interesting is like basically we see the quote unquote like Battle of Isengard. We don't actually see it happen.
Yeah.
Merry and Pippin just kind of tell us about what happened. Like we show up and it's already over. The Ents have already won. There's not really any suspense at that point. I guess there's suspense in terms of like, what is Saruman going to do? Like, is he going to be able to, I don't know, we don't know what the wizards can really do. So maybe he could have gotten out of it, or, you know, we don't know if he could, but we don't see the battle, like, you know, to compare to the movies where we very viscerally like are watching the battle happen. And this one, it's like they get there, the Ents have already won. And then they're like, they find Merry and Pippin just like chilling out. And it's like, hey, let's smoke some weed. You can tell us about the cool battle you just saw.
I also like, too, that when they find the Longbottom leaf, like, if you know about the scouring of the Shire, it's like this one, like, discordant note on that scene. Like, otherwise, you're just like, oh, how did the Longbottom leaf get here? But I feel like now that you know that the scouring of the Shire is happening in book 3, it's like this one false note over this, like, pretty great scene of them just hanging out. As well as Claire and I talked about this, so we can mention it briefly. I love that at one point, I think Merry or Pippin says, there's the old Strider, like as they're just like hanging out. And it's almost like the old identity returns briefly in this like scene of like post-battle relaxation or something, as opposed to being Aragorn the king or like the man who was the king.
Aragorn's back to being a Wook.
It's also very, I didn't mention this, it's very Prince Hal from Henry IV, where he's like pretending to be a degenerate until he becomes the king. And in this one, it's like, he comes back into being a Wook, just like a guy that hangs out outside and just, goes to concerts. So, but yeah, Claire, did you have anything about like the way this like structure is? If anything you noticed about reading it this time, like the way it lays out plot stuff?
I mean, not specifically. I do think it's interesting that we don't get to see the battle in Isengard. I think once I don't want to get too much into Return of the King because that's not what we're here to talk about. But like, if we also include thinking about the battles that happen in the Return of the King, like the Hobbit element of those battles kind of adds like their perspective and their sort of sense of feeling out of their depth. And like we don't see that so much in Helm's Deep because there are no hobbits at Helm's Deep. And so that's why like there is less of that happening in the Two Towers. But once the gang is back together, and the hobbits are back with the rest of the team, for the remainder of the story, we kind of have that element happening of the hobbits kind of reminding us as the reader, reminding the whole team, like, I don't know, like there's sort of a none of the hobbits are heroes, you know. They don't, even when they participate in battles, even when they act in brave and heroic ways, they don't want to be there. They don't like
They're not killing 40 orcs. And,
they're not killing 40 orcs, and they don't like to kill. They don't like to, they're not
valiant. They might be brave, but they're never valiant.
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't even call it that. It's just that like they're not there to do violence. They're there for other reasons. It's almost like Faramir with what his sort of view of what his job is. He sort of, what does he say? He's like, I don't love the sword for its sharpness. I love what it defends, right? And that's almost the Hobbit perspective on what they're doing there.
Yeah.
Whereas like with someone like Éomer, someone like Éowyn, someone like Boromir, even like they love the sword, right? That's their favorite thing.
Well, Faramir makes a big point of that when he says like that, you know, the Gondorians are like less high than they used to be. They've become more like the Rohirrim. They love arms and fighting for its own sake rather than like for its purpose.
Yeah. Well, and I think hobbits are a good reminder of that too, because it's not that they're not willing to take up a sword. It's not like Pippin is not willing to take up a sword when it's handed to him, but he's not going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think that with the hobbits and with Faramir, I think we get a little bit of an author perspective inserted.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and too, like, I think the battle cries are usually like related to what they're defending. Because I know Frodo's from Fellowship was for the Shire when he stabs that big orc. And then in the Helm's Deep, they're like all doing their like anime power up shouts where it's like they're all just like yelling like, for Helm's Deep, for Rohan, you know, various things. And there's like a bit where they're just like all saying respective languages, which I thought was cool. But
So then like with Isengard, when we get sort of the battle experience refracted through a Hobbit lens, and also in Ithilien when we get it refracted through Sam.
Yeah.
We're not in the battle. We get, you know, Sam thinking about, you know, like, wow, look at this enemy soldier. I wonder what he's doing here. I wonder how did they convince him to fight? You know, like we're sort of he's not there to enjoy the violence either, right?
And he just wants to see
see much of it happen, right?
Yeah, the Oliphant, really. That's why he's there.
He's so excited about the Oliphant. It's like we don't really witness much of the violence happening. We're witnessing what does Sam think is important here, which is Oliphants and like the humanity of the people who are involved.
Well, I think there's also something in terms of the Battle of Isengard, in terms of just like Tolkien kind of establishing how like the Ents are just like kind of a total game changer. Like once they're involved, like there's really no chance. Like I kind of forgot like what a jobber fucking Saruman is. Like he just through the whole book, like he has no chance like from the jump. Like, and then as soon as the Ents show up, like there's no way that he can win. He's been deluded. He's been completely delusional from the very start, which
he's been looking at his orb.
Is interesting. He's been pondering his orb too much.
So,
well, and I almost don't know if he's completely delusional, because he was counting on the Ents not caring enough to intervene. And he wasn't wrong about that up until the breaking point, and then they decided actually no, this is our fight too, and so he just gambled wrong.
And I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think one of the reviews on the Wikipedia entry for this talked about how like the chain of causality for these books, where it's like the Ents don't know about it unless Merry and Pippin show up. Merry and Pippin don't show up because they get kidnapped by the orcs, and they don't leave the orcs because the Rohan show up. So like there's this chain of events that leads to what happens in a way that like you guys are saying. It's like he was gambling on them not caring, but then like the smallest thing changes, and then suddenly the Ents care. And also just gotta say, I feel like the Ents are one of my favorite factions, just because there's a lot of like emphasis on Tolkien taking like Germanic traditions, like the idea of folkmoot, which is like thing, which John will remember. There's a great depiction of a thing in the book, The Longships, where like it was like a thing where you would show up at this place and have like tribal gatherings to talk about like basically do Robert's Rules of Order, and like the Ents do that, and it takes like days, and that's how they decide that they're pissed off. And that's a cool thing that I feel like Tolkien is like, these Ents speak Elvish, but I'm going to use some of my Germanic traditions for their culture, and like that combination to me is fascinating. So.
Yeah, love the Ents. Just
Big fan.
big fan. I mean, I find it feels like I mean, obviously Tolkien does do some description of like his various like peoples throughout the book, but the Ents, it feels like the first time where we really like physically get into like what do these things look like?
Yeah, and how do they think too? Yeah.
Yeah. They're the first beings that feel like not totally inhuman, but like really have a totally like elves have a different perspective, but it's still like recognizable. Whereas like the Ents, like you really kind of have to do a little more digging to kind of like figure out, okay, how are they actually seeing any of this?
Yeah.
Because their perspective is so much slower compared to even the elves. You know, the elves live just as long, if not longer, but they, you know, have a you know, a more almost individualist perspective, whereas the Ents just take so long to come to any conclusion, but then once their mind is set, like they can't just switch out of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, which is why Isengard gets destroyed, because they're fucking pissed off. So
they're so fucking mad.
yeah. So, but yeah, and then like again, I feel like Tolkien's riffing a little bit on like Germanic languages, because when I had the quote pulled, because when Treebeard talks about like what he was doing before Merry and Pippin show up, he has like one word for it, and he says it in Entish, and he goes, "Excuse me, that is a part of my name for it. I do not know what the word is in the outside languages. You know, the thing we're on, where I stand and look out on fine mornings and think about the sun and the grass beyond the wood and the horses and the clouds and the unfolding of the world. What is going on?" And the idea that you would have like one word for all of that feels very like Germanic to me. But also like it captures, like you could see like Heidegger like running away with that if we wanted to get into that about like unfoldingness and being and that kind of stuff. But it's just there in the thing Treebeard says. So I think that's cool.
I do love the moments of humor like that where there's just, oh yes, of course the Ents have one single word that means all of those things.
Yeah, and he's just like, "Excuse me, I don't know your word for it, but yeah, it would be all of this." So yeah.
Well, and also just like the you know, there's an element of tragedy to it as well, but also just like they're looking for the Entwives. They lost they lost all their women.
Yeah, which I think I put this. I did want to talk about that briefly. Claire, you had sent me a really great article about like the differences between the Entwives and the Ents, which like we probably don't have a whole time to get into, but there is this like sense of loss that I think relates to the kind of like diminishment we talked about on the last episode, where it's like, yeah, they had wives and the wives would sort of they were more like gardeners, but then the men, the Ents were more like people that went and found sort of stuff in nature. But then it feels like they had two perspectives that were complementary, but then like diverged. And then, yeah, the Entwives just disappeared. And like, meanwhile, like the Ents are slowly becoming like trees that don't move. Like, I don't remember what the phrases they use, but it's like they don't ever wake up sometimes. So there's a kind of like loss that happens. Yeah.
The Ents become tree-ish and the trees become Entish.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's a nice, like, again, I feel like in lesser hands, it would be like beating the same theme over you. Like, yeah, things used to be good. They're going away now. But I feel like Tolkien manages to do it in interesting ways with each faction where like, yeah, we can recover the past even if we've lost some part of it, like the Entwives or, you know, getting back to like Rohan's whole deal in Theoden. But yeah.
Yeah. I think that is kind of like an underlying theme that we'll come back to many times, like what this loss means and what it looks like for everybody. Like for the Ents, this is what it means and this is what it looks like, and for other people it looks different, but you can't undo it and you can't unlose what you've lost. You can only, you know, build something else, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, in the case of the Ents, I mean, they are still looking for the Entwives. I mean, it seems kind of varying in terms of how intensely they're searching.
Right. Yeah.
You know, Treebeard's just kind of like when he meets someone, he's like, "Are the Endwives in the Shire? Have you seen my wives?" But it's not like none of them seem to be like actively looking that hard, and like they also don't seem like they're kind of bummed about it. But it's not like they're not like the elves. They're not despondent. They're not sorrowing in the same way.
Yeah, and Treebeard even criticizes himself where he's like, I think related to Saruman, he's like, I've become lazy, like I've just been chilling too much. And I think that might be kind of related to the idea of just Treebeard being a wife guy. It's just like, have you seen my wife? And like, but then since he's like a tree, it's like he gets like preoccupied with like, you know, thinking slowly and like being where he is. So,
well, and I think it's also been so long.
Oh yeah.
Even in the beginning, if it was more devastating at this point, there's no sense of hope anymore.
Yeah. When they live so long that like having children isn't probably something they think about super frequently, even if the Endwives were around.
Yeah, and it's like Quick Beam, I guess, is like a younger cohort, I think, like younger Ents. Yeah. Yeah, I find the Ents to be fascinating because, like we were saying, it feels like he actually spends time with their point of view more. I mean, not to say that he doesn't with other factions, but it's like, I don't know, they're just so well sketched. I feel like they seem so familiar and so alien at the same time, and they have their own culture, and they are like instrumental in the plot going the way that it does. So it's like that's like a triple threat right there. So,
well, I think it's a couple things. Oh, Claire, if you want to step in.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say I don't know. Maybe I just don't read enough folklore, enough fantasy, but I don't know if Ents are something that he invented wholesale or if there is like an antecedent somewhere else in literature. Because like dwarves are dwarves, they exist, you know, in folklore and elves, fairies, that sort of thing. That's he's pulling from existing folklore that's out there. But I don't know if Ents are something that he was sort of just kind of like thinking, what if that tree came to life? Or if he was like drawing from something that already existed. And so maybe that's why he was spending more time filling in the illustration a little bit, is because he was inventing it for himself. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there were like tree spirits, and I think that we even see those even earlier in the story with Old Man Willow. Who we find out what he was in this book. It turns out, there are a bunch of evil living trees that just kind of wander around when the Ents aren't keeping an eye on them.
Is this like a dryad kind of a thing, or?
Yeah, well, I think he's drawing on various traditions. I mean, trees have obviously been very important in all human cultures because it's where we get wood from. But I think that this is something that he is inventing, and he's blending various things together. You know, there's kind of there's a line, I don't have it off the top of my head, where the Ents kind of compare themselves to trolls, or someone compares Ents to trolls, and like they're in the same way like orcs are elves, you know, Ents are trolls. You know, they're the good version of trolls. And so I think he's
back to that,
blending in some kind of ideas about giants and about kind of maybe like even Norse Jotun and kind of these elemental beings, things that are like very tied into nature in this very concrete way. I think it's really interesting the way that scale like works in Tolkien, because the Ents are crucially the only, at least of like the quote unquote like free peoples, they're the only like giant race. You know, we have like the humans, elves, and dwarves, which are all kind of on like a similar size scale. You know, obviously the dwarves are like shorter, but not to the point where like it's called out super frequently. And then you have the hobbits, who are like the little people. And the way that kind of gives very different, you know, the hobbits and the Ents are, I think, the two beings where their different perspective, like the most attention is drawn to it. And I think that there's also something there in terms of kind of the way that Tolkien does exposition, because another thing that does happen, and we can maybe discuss this is kind of a stylistic move, you know, Treebeard kind of just explains how the Ents think to the hobbits.
Right, yeah.
And then at the very beginning of Fellowship, like we talked about last week, like he just kind of tells us how hobbits work. Whereas like the elves and the dwarves, like, yeah, there's occasionally like some exposition drop, but there's a lot more kind of left to the imagination, at least in terms of kind of the world view. Obviously, we don't know everything about like what do Ents, how do Ents fuck? Presumably they do. And presumably, since Tolkien's Catholic, it's missionary for procreation only.
Yeah, and it's like, well, it's like he's like, we're not going to get into that. Like, we're just when Treebeard starts talking about it. Yeah,
but Tolkien does like his exposition, which fair enough.
Yeah, I think I want to just briefly mention. I feel like that also happens when. And I made a note about it when Gandalf is leaving with Pippin to go to Gondor at the end of the first half, and Pippin's just like, "What the hell is going on?" And it feels like Gandalf just explains a bunch of stuff to him, which like thematically or like in the story makes sense. It's like we're on this horse ride. I might as well explain stuff, but that also kind of feels like not an exposition dump, but it's like here's some things I think I should clear up at this point in time. So yeah.
Yeah, it's something that with Tolkien is I'm always of two minds about it, because let me say he does it better than most people do, because he's, at least in my opinion, again, he's even when he's writing prose, even when he's writing what could be like plotting exposition, he's doing it with a somewhat like poetical style.
Yeah.
So, it's not like just he's not just inserting Wikipedia entries into the story the way that some of the people who badly imitate him do.
I will say one of my favorite moments when he does this is right after Gandalf returns and Aragorn is like, "Gandalf, you're talking to yourself again." And Gandalf is like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's a bad habit of mine. I always talk to the smartest person in the room."
But there are points where I think it really works. Like, I think when we go into the lair of Shelob and he just kind of like tells us what Shelob's whole deal is, like it works.
Yeah.
Like it's cool that we find out, like it gives a sense of the scale of the world. Like, oh, this is a monstrosity from beyond like recorded history. It's the spawn of an even bigger, more unspeakable monstrosity from even earlier in time.
Yeah.
In a way that like I would not want like Frodo and Sam to like find a scroll that just says all that, or I also like would not want that to be there.
It would make even less sense for there to just be a random spider pop out of nowhere and we don't know why.
Well, I mean, it could just be a big bugaboo monster, but it wouldn't tell us anything about like why is this here. And I think Tolkien, but there are also places where he chooses not to explain what's going on much at all. Like Ben, kind of to segue to where you originally wanted to be when we started, Gandalf coming back. Like, if you've read some of the background, like, Gandalf's not a human. He's actually this weird angel spirit that's existed since the beginning of time. And he was incarnated as a wizard to guide the free peoples of Middle Earth. And so he can actually die. So when he died in Moria, God was like, you should just get back in there.
He just like pats him on the back.
He gave him a 5-minute break for some Gatorade and orange slices and said, get back in there, champ.
Well, also when he's fighting the Balrog, that's some like fantastic geometry, because they go to like the bottom of the world and then they go to like the top. like there's like some crazy shit that happens during that sequence that's sort of like only kind of explained. And like he talks about like the things that gnaw on the ends of the world that he sees down there, which is like, again, John, something you talked about in the early episode, like it's nice to not have everything fully explained, because you could just think about like what that might be. But I don't know about like, because I don't think I figured out that he was an angel until like way later when I want to say like when I read these like in college again, and I was like, wait, why did Gandalf come back?
Well, and again, it's never like fully explained. Like there's never a point where Gandalf's like, I'm not human. my real name is X, and I'm one of the Maiar.
Yeah, the secret flame. Yeah.
The secret flame? There is a point where I noticed this time, because I had forgotten that they ever actually get mentioned in Lord of the Rings. The Gondorians do like directly reference the Valar, who are like the gods, if you are unfamiliar with the kind of deep lore. And so like, yeah, it's this thing where he shows the scope, but doesn't like get completely bogged down in showing us everything.
Yeah.
And I'm always like again, like I said, I'm of two minds here, because there are so many people who try to imitate him, and just, I want to show off everything I've thought of for my Middle Earth version, 6,352, and you just get these, Wikipedia articles inserted directly into the plot, because this person has thought about like, how does agriculture work in the Elf Kingdom, blah blah blah, and it's boring as shit. But then there's sometimes where I'm like, okay, it feels really important that Gandalf is different than what we think he is at the beginning.
Yeah, reincarnated. Yeah.
Like, it's kind of a huge twist that Tolkien just never explains.
Yeah, I have a spiel about this, but yeah, Claire, I think you should go first. What do you think about Gandalf coming back? Like, how do you interpret that? Because I have something I want to say about it, but I feel like I want to see what your thoughts are about it, because it is very, like, I don't know, it's unexpected and it's sort of like galvanizing, which I think is cool. So,
well, it's also kind of weird because it happens so fast. Actually,
right.
if you're going right from Fellowship into Two Towers, it's like, there's 50 pages without Gandalf, and then Gandalf's back.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is like, I mean, we talked a little bit about Tolkien being Catholic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, among the other things that could be relevant as a result of that is, sometimes there's just mystery.
Yeah.
And like, he could have explained. It's not like he didn't know. Even at this point, like when he's writing Lord of the Rings, he already had his entire world mapped out. He had like when Christopher Tolkien's putting together the Silmarillion, all that stuff was already written. Like, it was notes that he was pulling together from his dad's stuff. Like,
I guess I always forget that the Silmarillion wasn't really meant to be published the way it was, right?
Yeah, like he was planning a Silmarillion. He was putting one together, and like he was going to publish it. He just, we just don't know exactly what form that would have taken. But like, it would all have been out there, and he was putting this together. But like, he didn't want that to be in Lord of the Rings. He could have put it in there, and he chose not to. And so he wanted it to be mysterious. He wanted this to be unexplained. And so I think that he saw value in mystery being a part of the world that he's putting on the page for us.
Yeah. But that's where I was going to go with it, because I was thinking a lot about like religious revelation reading the Two Towers, because I feel like the way that Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas encounter Gandalf on the road is like Jesus in Emmaus, which I think is, I had made a note of what book that was, but the idea that like we meet this random guy, we don't know who he is, it turns out he is the guy, and his like the reveal of him being the guy is like almost like overwhelming, because like there's like the sword bursts into flame, like a lot of crazy stuff happens. Gandalf seems to forget who he's talking to, which is a detail that I didn't notice, which is I think awesome. Like the idea that he's just been so wrecked by this transformation that he forgets what he's doing for a minute, and so it's almost like it's like mysterious, it's overwhelming, it's like so good that it's confusing. And I think that kind of relates to, I didn't get to talk about this last episode, so I'm going to keep it brief, but catastrophe, like the idea of things unexpectedly going well. And Tolkien has a very strong religious explanation for this. For instance, like, Christ's resurrection, Jesus being born. But I think it's interesting that it doesn't feel like Deus Ex Machina or anything, because the characters have to be deserving of this good thing that happens to them. Gandalf, of course, is working his ass off. He's like in the first part of Two Towers, he's riding all around, and he's getting Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas to do things that are supporting the cause. But again, it's mysterious, but also like the characters have to deserve this good thing that happens to them. And some of them aren't just like, well, I'm not going to do anything. It's like, well, Gandalf's back and now we got to go save Isengard or Helm's Deep. Like, I don't know. There's something like great about it in terms of being like, they have to be deserving of this thing as opposed to just a good thing happening because, you know, I'm not a good plotter and I've plotted their way into a corner. I don't know. I think that the fact that it's like deserving and not explained, I think go hand in hand, even if I don't have it like fully worked out. But I just noticed that a lot this time. Yeah.
I don't think deserving is the right word. I would quibble on a theological level.
Okay, this is good. See, this is why I wanted you on, because I feel like there's some good theological stuff in here we can get into. So
and maybe this is because I was raised Protestant. I don't know. But because if we take like the resurrection, for example, as the catastrophe.
Yeah.
Right. Like as an act of grace, as this being like a way of describing eucatastrophe, like deserving doesn't really come into it.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it also isn't an excuse to just sit on your butt and not do anything.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those are like kind of separate things.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm just like, on the one hand, they could have taken Gandalf's return as what was, I guess, okay, Gandalf's back. We don't have to do anything now.
Right. Yeah.
Gandalf can do it.
Gandalf can do it for us.
He can apparently just die and come back, so he can just do whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that would have been like the wrong answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
To this, you know, act of grace that they've been given. Right.
Well,
and
I think
so, like,
also.
if we're, so sorry, like just like
no, go ahead.
If we're just like, I mean, this is kind of like the core theological question in like when Catholics and Protestants are fighting about like, like how do you respond to an act of grace? And so like when you ask a Lutheran, they're like, no, this is just unmerited grace, whatever. Like you do nothing to deserve it. It is just a gift. And maybe a Lutheran listening to this is going to fight with me, and I don't know, whatever. But like maybe a Catholic response would be, you didn't earn this, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Like it's, or maybe I'm thinking of Calvinists, I don't know, like, but like
no, I mean it's grace I mean, even like I don't know if Tolkien would even say like, oh, they earned Gandalf coming back.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But
then
then on the other hand, like the response to the act of grace is, okay, so now what are we gonna do with it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think there's also something, you know, I think to think about Gandalf himself. You know, obviously, again, he's not human as we understand it, but he's also not like a totally like robotic,
right?
Like angel. Like he clearly has some he has some kind of interiority of his own. He's the one who made the sacrifice, in Moria, and he's not really getting rewarded here. Like we said, it's kind of like God is like, get back in the game. You know, he and even, you know, there I think in terms of kind of this theme of loss, of change that we've you know talked about throughout this series and throughout this episode, you know, Gandalf the White is and is not Gandalf the Gray.
Yeah.
You know, he in a certain sense it is literally the same spirit, you know, incarnated into a new body. But even to, you know, Gandalf, you know, his memory is fucked up. His personality isn't quite the same.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, part of it is kind of what is happening in the plot, but like, you know, he's not kind of cute, funny Gandalf anymore. I mean, he has moments where you can still see that as part of him, but he's much more serious. He's much more heroic in a way. You know, he's kind of you know, taken on a new role in the narrative as he needs to. But I think that there is like something lost there in that promotion, so to speak. And again, he doesn't necessarily seem to be enjoying being, you know, he does. I think there's a part of him that would rather still be Gandalf the Grey.
Yeah.
But he's had this, you know, responsibility thrust on him, and he's had this new identity thrust on him. You know, Saruman has betrayed the order of the world, and there needs to be a new white wizard.
Yeah.
I always wonder, like, somewhere else in the world, like, did one of the blue wizards get like promoted to being the gray wizard? Because the blue's the only one where there's a spare.
Yeah.
So are there two wizards in case one of them like fucked up? And so it's like, okay, well, we can have all the colors still.
Yeah, he just like he immediately just is like, I should see what those hobbits are up to.
Have you heard of weed?
Well, and I think there's like a parallel here between what he does, what you just described, John, and what he does to Theoden. Because I find Theoden's transformation to be fascinating in that, like, it's almost like a kind of like Lazarus come out kind of moment where like he's not in touch with outdoors. He's receiving lies from Wormtongue, his assistant that Saruman sent. And like Gandalf sort of like awakens him in a way that's really interesting. And again, like I find it to be that kind of like like the mysteriousness of it we've been talking about. Like it happens not in, I think, full bore as with Gandalf resurrecting, but like Theoden waking up, like, I don't know, there's something similar there in terms of like, either remembering who you are or like taking on a new responsibility and then like, doing something good with this transformation you've received, even if it's like, overwhelming or hard to comprehend. So
touch grass.
Yeah, he basically tells him to touch grass and he gives him his sword back, which has, been memed for quite some time now. So yeah, but
he also says something very similar to Frodo. When Frodo is like, I wish the ring had never come to me, Theoden is like, alas, that these evil days should be mine. Like this is very much a theme for people. It's like, well, fuck, why did this have to happen to me? Like,
yeah. Yeah, and I guess like Theoden was pretty comfortable before this, where like everyone was telling him, everything, or Wormtongue was saying like, everything's fine or whatever.
Yeah, he's like, I was fine before this, but now that you've like awakened me, like now I have to deal with all of this. Like,
I as a brief tangent, I wish we had more. I think there might be more Rohan in Return of the King, but I feel like we get like that glimpse of that banner of like a valiant man. I don't remember the character's name, but like a legended Rohan culture. And then when Saruman is in his tower, he like utters like a slur against Rohan culture where he talks about like rolling on the floor with the brats and the dogs. And like that's the kind of like stuff that I feel like it would be cool if there was more of, but I feel like within this book, at least, it's like there's so much stuff happening that there's not time for it. But it's like, I don't know, just the Rohan culture is fascinating. And again, I like Theoden as like this awakened king or something like that. So yeah.
It's something where I feel like what really struck me in this book in a way that it Fellowship, again, Fellowship didn't feel baggy, but Fellowship felt long. Fellowship felt like there was space. In a way that I liked. Again, the way we talked about the way time is employed in that book, Ben, the way that like in the book, like months or years pass between stuff happening in that book, whereas in this book, it's like there's like this book takes place over the course of like a couple days.
It takes 5 minutes.
In a way that I kind of missed that like longer tone. And because I felt like things happened so fast. And I actually think that this is maybe why some of the stuff I remembered from the movies felt different. I feel like the Theoden stuff in the movie like comes across like a lot more almost supernatural. He seems like enchanted in a way where in this one he just seems kind of like a lazy old fuck.
That jump cut of Wormtongue being slided across the floor in the movie is like some of the more like supernatural filmmaking, because it's like you're shown what happens and then you're shown that image as like a stand-in for what just happened. It's really like Kuleshov effect. Anyway, it's quite supernatural.
Yeah, and then like as soon as Theoden like is back, they're immediately going to Helm's Deep. Yeah. And then as soon as Helm's Deep is done, they're going to Isengard, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Can I have like a scene of someone eating food or like singing a song again, please?
Please. Yeah.
I think if we want to talk about Wormtongue at all, like
absolutely.
And by extension Saruman, like it is very interesting kind of the gray area between kind of his like psychological manipulation and like supernatural power.
Yeah.
Because when we see Saruman, like using this like power of his voice, it almost seems like he's just gaslighting people.
He's just lying.
Yeah. And like if Christopher Lee was just trying to gaslight me in front of people, like it might work. Just his voice lying to me.
Yeah.
He might not need magic to do that. I don't know.
Gatekeep, gaslight. Yeah.
Right. But like, so there's kind of a gray area in there between just like very talented people being able to lie very well and very effectively, and like crossing the line into magic. And so like maybe Wormtongue doesn't have any magical powers, but he's just very good at it. And he's able to sort of use that non-magical power to like manipulate Theoden and lie to him and get him to not do anything. And then Saruman is just also very good at that, but also has magic backing him up. And so there's kind of a spectrum here.
Yeah. Well, crucially also, I mean, Theoden doesn't want to not believe Wormtongue. He wants to believe everything's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's also a line in terms of like, how much is Wormtongue actually like a good liar and how much is it that he's just telling Theoden what he wants to hear? Right. Because Theoden does not want to go to war against Mordor because that would be really hard and he's really old and he doesn't have an heir. You know, and his son, something that struck me this time, his son is dead. He's lost his natural heir. He has an heir, at least in terms of, Éomer, but Éomer's not his son. He's his nephew, his sister's son, which that confused me a little bit when he calls Éowyn like sister daughter. And I was like, wait. Have I forgotten something about like,
yeah.
Are they doing like Targaryen stuff? And I forgot.
Wrong series.
He wants to preserve Rohan and he wants to preserve like their, his dynasty. Yeah. And going to war with Mordor jeopardizes that. And I think that that's a huge part of kind of this whole broader theme Tolkien's doing is this resistance to change, leading people to ignore problems. The fact of the matter is, like, I mean, I don't know. There's always the question of like how much of this is fate and, magic and like, is there a way that Theoden could have just made a different choice, or is like he doomed to not do that until Gandalf shows up? But it's if the Rohirrim had like gotten serious about Sauron sooner, like would this be as big a problem as it is?
Yeah. Well, and it's always much easier to convince people to not choose anything than it is to convince people to choose something. Yeah. But ultimately, like the thing that Saruman and Wormtongue, etc., need Theoden to do is to not, join the Avengers. Right. They need to not join, Gondor and the rest. They need to not form an alliance that will counter, the enemy.
Yeah, they just need to keep paying their tribute of black horses.
They need to stand alone. Because the thing that makes them a threat is when they join others. And so if they just continue to be isolated, they're not threatening anymore. And
you had said something, Claire. Isn't it like Rohan is like a vassal state of Gondor, or what's the like
kind of
like the relationship between the two? Because I like that there's some like enmity, but it's not like fully worked out exactly.
They're not enemies, but like the reason that Rohan exists is that Gondor granted them territory 500 years ago or something, and so there is kind of a
subordinate.
There is a sense of that subordinate relationship, but then also, like Éomer speaks very highly of Boromir, and is like, wow, like we heard that he went to Rivendell, and we're all waiting anxiously to hear about him. So there's not enmity, but there is like inequality.
There's friction. I mean, there's they're very different cultures in a way, even while they have this intercourse with each other.
And I think that the less valiant people of Gondor would look down on them. I don't think Faramir would, because Faramir can do no wrong and we love him. But someone like Denethor maybe would look down on Rohan and think less highly of them, perhaps, because they're not special. They're not Numenorian.
They're not cultured.
Right, yeah, like I get the impression they have like thatched houses or something, even if they are quite beautiful inside. It's like, they're not building these huge castles or whatever. Yeah.
So they're in the eyes of the Numenorian types, they're a step up from the other types of men because they're our friends, but they're lower than us because they don't have books and they don't have stone houses. And
they're mid.
Mid Rohan. So also the black horse thing is funny. It's like, how many black horses do you think they have? Like, just the idea that it's like oh, this is the 2 black horses we have to send to the evil man. And it's like these you can't tame these horses at all. Like, it's just a funny detail.
Yeah. I thought that Éomer was super offended by that, actually. I think he's like, no, they steal them, we don't.
Okay, yeah.
That was the rumor at the beginning, and then Fellowship was like, oh, they're paying tribute to Mordor, but then Éomer's like, no, they're stealing our horses.
We only
you think the orcs ever take like just some dark brown horses and then get in trouble when they get back?
Probably.
No, I swear this one's black.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, like that kind of gets at something that I think comes up a lot, which is like kind of the competing narratives that will happen in the story. It's like, well, this person says that they're paying tribute. This person says, no, they're not paying. We're not paying tribute. They're stealing horses. And like, well, which one is it? Like, of course, Éomer is going to say that he's not paying tribute.
Right.
Like, but like, I think this also comes up with like the question of like orcs. Like, of course, these like the people who are fighting orcs are going to say that they're just like puppets that Sauron created so that they can kill them. But like somebody else is going to say, no, they're like creatures with soul. Like which one is the convenient narrative? Like what? Yeah. And like Tolkien himself, who like studies language and studies folklore, I think is fully conscious of that and fully conscious of how stories work and how folklore works. And I think is doing this on purpose. Because
I found myself thinking, after the Battle of Helm's Deep, when they're like counting up their kills, like Gimli's like, I killed 43 orcs. And, I was thinking
that's
about
a lot of orcs, man.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I was like, okay, if I found out like, like let's say I had like a great uncle who was in like World War II and he killed like 43 guys, I'd be like, damn, he must be like a psychopath. Like, even if those people were like Nazis, it's still like the fact that you killed like 43 people and were just able to like keep going through life, like that's crazy.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the orc question, we could say, Claire, because I feel like, as you just said, John, they're kind of treated like cannon fodder in some of the battle scenes. And the questions of whether or not they are souls or have agency is somewhat answered in this book because we actually get to hear them talk amongst themselves. And there's a lot of attention played between the like factional arguments between Saruman's orcs and Sauron's orcs. And then you get to overhear orcs talking when we get to the Frodo and Sam section. And I think like you had mentioned how Tolkien clearly thought a lot about this, about whether or not orcs have souls. And I think that gets back to what we were saying about like, even if he thinks about these questions and writes up like letters and analyses of these, he knows when to include that stuff and when not to. And I think that, to me, like you were saying, John, the Wikipedia entry type author would be like, I'm going to make sure I have a scene where we debate how many orcs we killed. And instead it's just
I'm just going to say in text, like the orcs don't have souls, so it's fine.
Right. Yeah. And so I think, Claire, you had something you wanted to say about that, because I think he like try to answer the question in letters about whether or not orcs are ensouled or not.
He was very troubled by the idea that he created like totally evil creatures. Yeah, because he's Catholic, and like that's not a thing.
Yeah, right.
And like even in the Lord of the Rings, I think it's not consistent the way that he treats it. I think part of that is because of this notion of like different factions having their own competing narratives and their own competing attitudes, which I think a lot of conversations and like analyses of the Lord of the Rings don't take into account. I think people just like take the text at face value and think, oh, well, this this narrative part of the narrative says this and that's what's happening. It's like, well, no, maybe the narrative is inconsistent because the people who are in the narrative are inconsistent. I don't know. So
yeah,
no, I mean,
a different part of the question. But so when Treebeard himself is like, well, the orcs were created to be, or they're created to be an imitation of elves or whatever. It's like, well, maybe Treebeard's wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Like nobody is considering.
He's never heard of a hobbit before, and he lost his wife. Would you trust a man who just lost his wife?
He lost his wife 3,000 years ago.
Could not find her.
But yeah, so you're right. Like that we also see orcs demonstrating agency.
Yeah.
In the story, and one thing that I found particularly fascinating in that regard is in the Tower of Kirithungol. One of the orcs, like when I think it's Gorbag and Shagrat are fighting.
Yeah.
Well, they're fighting. They're talking. They're just shooting the shit or whatever. At one point, Gorbag is talking about like how much it sucks to have to work for Sauron and like the Nazgul and how scary the Nazgul are. And then he's like, wouldn't it be nice if we could just leave and go somewhere else where we don't have any boss?
Yeah.
And just like have a house somewhere. And he is like
do our own thing.
Yeah, he's like imagining a world where he doesn't have to live like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that actually really moving.
Yeah.
Even though he's the enemy in this scenario, he's literally holding Frodo captive and is going to send him to Sauron to be tortured to death.
Right.
But I found it like deeply moving that he hates that life. And he hates the world that he lives in. He hates what he has to do. And like, he's afraid of the people that he works for. And like Tolkien wrote that in the same body of work that he also wrote, thousands and thousands of these creatures being massacred.
Right.
With like no thought given to it.
With no thought given to it. And like also like these creatures are doing horrible things and we're not really like, are we supposed to feel sorrow about that? I don't really know. Yeah,
like Gimli compares them to trees a lot. Like I'm gonna hack some trees down. Yeah.
Yeah. But like outside of the narrative, Tolkien himself kind of waffled a lot about this. Yeah. And I think you're right about like for him being super religious, he can't really feel settled about creating something that has no soul or no potential for salvation.
Right.
But like he also couldn't feel settled about like giving Morgoth the power of creation, which is like part of the theological problem there. And so like that's also part of this question. And
because Morgoth is Satan, right? For listeners who might not be in the deep lore, there's the Satan to the god character. So
and he's the first one to use orcs back before Sauron did, and Sauron was one of his commanders back in the day.
I think that some of it is, even going back into like the kind of source material he's working for. Like this is kind of a very like, again, then it sort of is this way that like I think Tolkien is kind of this continuation of like medieval romance and like the Arthuriana and stuff like that. This attempt to kind of synthesize kind of pagan poetry with like Christian ethics. Have either of you ever read the Song of Roland?
No, I've heard about it.
No, I haven't.
So, I mean, it's a famous like, medieval French poem song. It's one of the kind of earliest examples of kind of the chivalric, poetry. And it tells the story of Roland, who's one of Charlemagne's like paladins, and his death at the hands of like basically Muslim invaders of like, coming up over the Pyrenees. And, there's a similar thing there. And again, if you go further into medieval romance, Saracens is kind of people who are, again, very much of a piece with like the Herodrim. Is that what
I think
called?
So?
They're kind of the more direct analog to that, because they're very obviously supposed to be like dusky people from warmer climes who have arrived
Right.
here.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, they get massacred, and there is really very little given over to them in terms of like their humanity. Like, because they are not Christian, they are essentially an afterthought, despite the fact that like this is being written by people who are, if anything, more fervently Christian than Tolkien was, because there was literally no alternative.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the point of view of the culture. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's something interesting there in terms of Tolkien really struggling with how to tell the type of story he wants to tell. He wants to have these big battles. He wants to have the climactic struggle of good versus evil, and you need, big armies to do that. And how do you do that without just making, the orcs, essentially automata, or again, even the southern men, it's like, why are they here? What are they getting out of this?
Yeah.
I think one of the ways he resolves that is by talking about Sauron's ability to enslave, using the ring originally, using his own force of will. And I think he ultimately harmonizes all of this by saying he can do that to orcs and he can do it to men.
Yeah.
Right, and like the wild men are like, oh, I thought that we were going to get burned alive by people at Helm's Deep, and that's not happening. Yeah,
and so that's super interesting too, because he brings that up, and he also, I think in the Tower of Cirith Ungol this is brought up, and then also in some of this sort of like outside material, he talks about how the orcs believe that the elves are going to eat them.
Yeah,
because that's what Sauron tells them.
Yeah.
Well,
there's this, like competing narratives again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking even, it's like at some point, presumably Saruman had to go up to some orcs and be like, hey, here's my pitch.
Using his voice, probably. Yeah.
But again, it's like, what are, what is the better deal that the white hand orcs think that they're getting over the red eye orcs? Because presumably there is something.
I could have, just as a side note, I could have gone with like a whole other chapter of just overheard factional disputes, because there's something really cool about like Merry and Pippin just kind of being like on the ground, being like, I don't know what's going on. As you were saying, John, these two factions are just arguing basically. Yeah. So
but it's also really interesting that like there are two factions, but they are like together, like physically, like moving through over the land, like, and arguing about like where they're going to go. It's not like they're just like immediately like, oh, we're on opposite sides of some conflict. Yeah. There's still like some solidarity, I guess, or something.
Solidarity.
Or maybe they're trading, I don't know exactly what is going on, but like they're not just like kill on sight because they're on the other side.
Some of it, I think, is that Saruman has told Sauron that he's working for him.
Oh, yeah.
And Saruman is not actually working for him. He's working for himself. And so the orcs maybe are reflecting that dynamic. Like the orcs, like Saruman's orcs, are loyal to Saruman, but know that they should at least play nice with Sauron's orcs.
Yeah.
But they're also doing a really bad job covering up for the fact that they're trying to take the hobbits to Saruman.
Yeah.
They're trying to.
We're good at it.
Yeah, no, but again, it's like even when that dispute breaks out, they're not immediately just like, okay, well, we're fighting now.
Yeah.
Like, there's dispute. There's disputation.
Yeah. They're not just immediately fighting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a quick thing because I remember, I don't know if I created this memory, but I remember when I read Two Towers as a kid, Gimli starts talking about how great the caverns of Helm's Deep are. And I said, why didn't we just go there? Like, we were literally just there. And I know they have to leave to go to do some other stuff, but there's this description that Gimli gives of the caverns of Helm's Deep, and I'm like, this is awesome. Why couldn't we go there? And I just wanted to note, I feel like the descriptive writing in the caverns, as well as the door to the west, which we'll get to, is like better than a lot of the descriptive writing in Fellowship of the Ring. And I don't know if like again, he wrote these all at the same time, so maybe it's just he was like feeling the need for more descriptive stuff. But John had talked about how in Fellowship there's a lot of like silver and gold effects, and then when you read him describing Helm's Deep, it's like a lot more complex and beautiful. And like, I'm not going to read the whole quote, but I had marked it like, you know, like Gimli talks about how columns of white and saffron and dawn rose fluted and twisted into dreamlike forms. Like even that is like incredible. And it's interesting that it's just given in this one speech where Gimli is like, oh man, we got to go there. And like, let's just like, yeah, we'll come back. We'll go there. And I just remember thinking like, why didn't they just go there? It's like they were there, but, and I know
Legolas wouldn't go. He was like, I'd pay gold not to go there.
Yeah, so I guess this is Gimli like trying to convince Legolas it would be worth it, which is maybe why this speech is so good. But to me, it's like some really great descriptive writing that I feel like, not that Tolkien's writing is bad, but I feel like he was pulling out the stops in that paragraph. So,
well, I feel like part of it is actually something I really think. I think Gimli is Tolkien's favorite, actually, of the Fellowship. Like, I think there's a reason he gets like all the best lines.
he really does. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's something there in terms of, I think it's this way of showing like the dwarven perspective.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit contrasting with the elven perspective, but there's kind of this thing about like, well, why would they let you fucking dwarves in there? You would just destroy it and strip mine it. And he's like, no, we would never do that.
How dare you?
How dare you? So I think maybe it's kind of a way of really showing us like, okay, the dwarves are flawed, but they also do have this really, there's a reason like they're one of the free peoples. There's they appreciate beauty in this way that the other like civilized races do,
right? And craftsmanship too. So yeah.
And so I think there's something there, but I do agree with you, Ben. Like that is a really beautiful passage, but I wonder if there's almost something in terms of like by putting it in a character's mouth, right, versus just being in kind of the omniscient narrator's voice. He kind of is more able to give that perspective on what's beautiful in this much more human way. Because it's coming from a person, and it's particularly it's kind of, I mean, obviously humans can find caves beautiful, but they're also something we have like a lot of ambivalence and like fear towards.
John, so our friend Dan, for instance. Yeah. So,
I mean, frankly, I don't know if you could pay me to go down into the caverns of Helm's Deep. I don't like the idea of being in a cave a lot. But we've established I am an elf.
Right.
But it is kind of this thing of like, okay, by putting it into Gimli's mouth, we really can understand like why this is beautiful. Yeah. In a way that maybe we couldn't if he was just like saying that.
Right.
Also, it gives another character, I think it's Gandalf, the opportunity to just roast him later by saying, if you want to hear about the caves, Gimli will not shut up about it.
Yeah, just some more Fellowship hijinks. So
So I do want to. Can we talk about the Fellowship for a second?
Yeah.
So maybe this can serve as kind of a way as we're springboarding towards talking about book 4, but I get what he's trying to do structurally. But man, I really hate the Fellowship not all being together.
Yeah.
I really, Ben and I were talking a little bit before the show, Claire, and we talked about this a little bit in the Fellowship episode too, how strange it kind of is that the Fellowship kind of becomes this archetype of like the fantasy adventuring party, and they're all together for like 150 pages, and then they're not together again until the very, very end. And it's kind of a bummer. And I get that like that's kind of the point, is that it's a bummer.
Well, yeah,
but I kind of wonder, like, what would it be like if they were all together through the whole book?
Like 1,000 pages or something? Yeah.
Not through the whole book, but like once the Fellowship is together, like what if the Fellowship was together through the story?
But counterpoint, if they were together through the story, a lot more people would die.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. Well, there's something that reminds me. I'm going to mention Henry IV again because I like that play so much. But in Henry IV Part 2, There's a bit where Shakespeare knows that Falstaff and Prince Hal riffing is the thing you want to see, so you don't get it in part 2. Like, they're split, and then they finally get together and they start riffing, and then it ends. And Falstaff is like, we were just getting to the good part, and then like they don't meet up again at the end part 2 until when Prince Hal is transformed to the king, and then their relationship is over basically. But like, I think there's something. I wonder if Tolkien even knows like that's some of the best stuff, and I'm gonna not give it to you because I have other things I want to do. So yeah,
which is really funny because he famously did not like Shakespeare.
Oh really? Okay, yeah. I don't know why I'm thinking about Prince.
To be fair, he had like a very mean old man like rapping his knuckles when he wasn't reading Shakespeare, right? As the product of an English public school.
Yeah,
he was getting beat up.
I think he was mostly offended by Shakespeare like disrespecting fairy in like A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh my god!
Wow, that's what a take. That's incredible. He's not doing fairies right. I hate him. That's incredible.
He's like, I'll allow the weird sisters. That's okay.
But yeah, there's something about like the fellowship, like the company of friends that like I feel like he gives you at times. But yeah, John, it's not as good as the full unit, like the full D&D party experience. So
yeah, you know, and I do think he does a good job. Like there would definitely be a risk in terms of like, to continue the D&D metaphor, you know, splitting the party the way that he does.
Yeah.
But he does a good job making what the non ring bearing party is doing like still feel important,
right,
in a way that I think in kind of lesser hands, like we'd be like, well, what's going on with the ring? That's the important thing. Whereas I think Tolkien does a good job showing like how this stuff is connected and how, you know, even if like Frodo did get the ring to Mount Doom, if everything is fucked up on the other end, like, yeah, a bunch of people still die. It's, you know, it's still important that Legolas and Gimli and Gandalf and Aragorn are doing what they're doing. Yeah. Even if it's not directly tied to the ring.
Yeah. And I think, before we talk about the ring, I guess we could also just stop in and say like the party does come together at Isengard where they check in on Saruman. Basically that scene with Saruman's voice, which we talked about, is quite interesting because Saruman is an expert gaslighter and flatterer, but he can only do it to one person at a time. I guess
he's a gay guy.
He
comes out wearing his pride flag robe.
He's slaying, he's posing, he's voguing, he's convincing everyone. But like also you get the impression that like you'd mentioned this, Claire, that like Isengard is like this like machinery craftsmanship, but it's like infernal. Because like Saruman is kind of like a craftsman, but he's been corrupted by the promise of power by contemplating his orb too much, that now he's become like kind of pathetic. Again, there's something also, I forgot how awesome it is when Gandalf just says, Saruman, your staff is broken. I had completely forgotten how incredible that is. So
that's pretty badass.
Yeah. Like it's quite a curb stomp, if you will. But like Saruman is a sort of corrupted craftsman, and then the party gets to kind of experience that and also talk about what just happened, you know, in terms of a kind of like fellowship thing where they're smoking and hanging out, which is great. I don't know, a lot of good stuff happens at the end there, and I don't know if you had something you wanted to say about Saruman and like sub creation or something.
Well, so I think Saruman is an interesting, like, an interesting kind of villain, because we don't ever get to meet Sauron in the story. He's just kind of like a force or a figure in the background that we just know is there. But we see Saruman. He's there. We talk to him. Not as much in the Fellowship. We just kind of like Gandalf talks about him and reports their conversation. But like in the Two Towers, we interact with him, right? And like, I think my reading experience of the Lord of the Rings was different because like my sister spoiled for me that he was a villain right off the bat. Like, I always knew that he was a villain, and so I didn't feel the devastation of his betrayal, you know. But like, if you think about it, like his betrayal is super devastating because from the beginning, he is like their ally who's super powerful. He is, you know, in the beginning, he is Gandalf the White, right? He's Sauron the White. Who they expect his help and they expect his support. in this
If
battle.
anything, he's supposed to be more
Sauron.
important than Gandalf.
Right. Yeah, and like they expect him there because he's also sent in this battle against Sauron with this like supernatural, mission, right? And then to have him defect, just like the force of that is really like
crushing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's crushing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we don't get any of this in the Lord of the Rings itself. So it's one of those things that, Tolkien knew and chose not to include. But it's interesting that like Saruman, similar to Sauron in his origin, like as like an angelic figure back in like when he's working for the Valar, his, patron deity or whatever is Aule, the creator of the dwarves.
The craftsman god, right? Yeah.
Craftsman god, right? And so like his affinity, if you will, is like creation and making of things. And it's like a good thing, right? And I feel like that because this idea of subcreation is so important to Tolkien, like when we're talking about like Tolkien sees himself as a creator, as a sub-creator, really, and a maker of things.
And he's like responsible for this thing he made. Yeah.
Yeah, he's responsible for this thing he made. I feel like
he has to figure out if the orcs have souls. Otherwise, he's being irresponsible.
It's important.
Yeah, he's made a bad thing. Yeah.
He doesn't want to make a bad thing, and he feels bad. And so it's like, so I almost feel like Saruman is extra important in that way because he sees like the ways that he could go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also, I mean,
prideful.
Wrong,
Yeah, it's like prideful. Yeah.
Well, there's also something there in terms of kind of Tolkien's kind of crankish, slightly affectionately crankish, like anti-technology. Like his famous hatred for automobiles and things like that. Yeah. And so I think there's kind of a little bit of sniping at this is knowledge put to bad use.
Right.
Yeah. Well, like
in his mind, that's anything that takes society's technological complexity past, English gentry life of a particular era.
But it's because he sees the creation in that sense as doing harm, right?
Mm. Right.
So he's not against technology as such. He's against technology that he sees as harming something, right?
Yeah.
And so we could say that he's wrong about that. Whatever. I don't know. People want to like fight with a deceased 100-year-old man, right? But what he's against there isn't he's not Amish, right? He's not against the fact of innovation. He's against something that he sees as damaging.
Yeah, and so and crucially, like it is created without respect for like its effects. Right,
exactly. And so like when Saruman has gone wrong, it's not that he is creating or innovating, it's that he's doing it to impose his will on people. And like that's why he wants the ring, right? He like has after he's sort of a little bit like Sauron, like he can't, because he knows the ring exists, he can't imagine somebody not having the ring. He can't imagine a world where nobody has the ring. He's like, well, if somebody's going to have the ring, it's going to be me because I'm going to be the one imposing.
And Gandalf says he's like a pathetic copy of Sauron, I think. Yeah.
Which is so devastating. It's such a devastating bird.
I
think it's also interesting because, like you said, Saruman is the villain we actually get his like motive a little bit. And to me, he's motivated by fear. Yeah. He again, we get in the first book, we get the council and we get, we find out, destroying the ring is going to require this task that like basically seems impossible. Right. Yeah. And in the same way Saruman kind of bets wrong on the ends, he bets wrong on the doability of destroying the ring. Right. Yeah. And he's kind of like, well, the ring can't be destroyed, so it can't fall into Sauron's hands because that would be really bad. Yeah. So someone's got to have the ring, and I have been tasked to like guide the free peoples of Middle Earth. So I'm the good guy. I should have the ring, and that
he's
leads
like, I'll
him
do
to
it right.
Yeah,
I'm the one who'll do it right.
Yeah. I'm gonna be the guy who can use this thing for good.
Which is like, so I think it's so interesting because so Gandalf says something during the Council of Elrond, which I think is so interesting. He because he's describing the task as like so absurdly ridiculous, like this is either folly or despair, right? But then he's like, despair is only for those who see the end beyond all doubt, and we don't see it yet. And so it's almost like Saruman, like if he did imagine the possibility of ever trying to destroy the ring, which we don't know that he's ever thought of it, but if he did, he despaired of it ever being possible. So he's like, well, the next best thing is, well, I'll do it then. I'll take it.
Well, and
so he has no hope that the world could ever be better.
Yeah.
And that pushes him to destroy. Like, I kind of almost get the impression I don't know that he necessarily initially enjoys destroying like all the beauty of Isengard, but he's like, this is what it's going to take.
Yeah.
And like that just turns him evil in the long run because he's, like you said, not considering.
Well, and that's why I like thinking about the Palantir as like just showing him Mordor, and he's like, well, I guess I just got to do that, or something And
not to skip ahead again, but isn't that kind of what happens to Denethor?
Yeah.
He sees the might of Mordor and gives up.
It despairs. Yeah.
He sees the might of Mordor, and it's implied in his Palantir, and is like, well, there is no hope. We cannot defeat this.
Right.
The world can never be better than what it is. Fuck.
This going back to everybody's got a dang Palantir in their pocket nowadays, just looking at the Palantir all day, going conservative. I find that the Palantir is fascinating because like, I don't know if Tolkien had a conception of like a computer, but the idea that like you look at something that shows you upsetting stuff and then just become evil. I have something about that. I'm like weirdly fixated on that for some reason. My friend was like, but he wouldn't know what a computer was. And I'm like, but still, it's like, it's not like the stone's talking to him. Yeah.
He had a vision of Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there's something there in terms of, Claire, what you were talking about earlier, this way that like, information and like knowing things works in these books. The role of like doubt and it's like these are people like they have this magic rock that can show them like what's going on in the world, and like they mistake that for the objective truth because it's coming from a magic rock.
A magic rock.
They see the might of Mordor, and it freaks them out because it's too much. Their perspective is out of range of what they're capable of comprehending.
Well, and one thing I liked about that is that like when they find the magic rock, because Saruman gets pissed off, or no, Wormtongue gets pissed off and throws it at them, and then Gandalf's like, I think Aragorn should have this, because it's like this like this thing that the men of Numenor, I guess, made and used when Gondor was at its highest, and Aragorn is like, I will only use this properly, which means I will not look at it. So there's something like interesting about like the proper use of these as they relate to Gondor, and like you were saying, John, like knowing things but not knowing like what's actually going on, or like the long view, I guess. Well,
I think it's also really interesting in terms of Gandalf kind of knowing his limits. Again, he's also like, don't give me the ring, don't give me the orb.
I don't want the ring, I don't want the orb.
Actually, you make a good point too about Gandalf, because I almost feel like Gandalf sees Saruman, well, and he even says like, I'm Saruman as he should have been, right? I almost like he sees Saruman taking a path that he could also have taken. It's almost the inverse of that statement, is like, Saruman is who I could have been if I had done something stupid like taken the ring. And like there is, I don't want to lean too hard on like the outside text and stuff, but there is a letter that Tolkien wrote where he sort of imagines what would have happened if Gandalf had taken the ring. Like, Gandalf is somebody who, like, as a being, he could counter Sauron, right? Like, he is type of being who could defeat
Yeah.
They're
him.
on the same like metaphysical level.
Or metaphysically, yeah, he's on that level, but he actually says Gandalf would be worse than Sauron because he would be self-righteous as a ruler, and he would be, you know, kind of like what you were describing about Sauron, which is like he would be the type of person who would be like, well, I
know best.
I know best. I know better than you. I can impose good on you.
Like Sauron, almost like the fact that he wants everything to be shitty all the time for everyone.
Right. at least he's honest about it, right? But Gandalf, if he was taking the ring, eventually he would take the path of like trying to impose his view of good on everybody. But because in Tolkien's, you know, moral universe, the freedom to choose is so fundamental. Well,
and that's also like why Galadriel can't take the ring.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Like, set up a queen, you know, beautiful and terrible as the dawn.
Yeah.
All would love me in despair.
And so, like, what Saruman is doing is imposing his vision of what he believes is good on everybody. And it's not good.
yeah, for sure.
But part of the reason it's not good is because it's not freely chosen.
Imposition.
Yeah, you know, I think I feel like when they get to Isengard, it's the first time slavery is brought up in the books.
Oh yeah,
and I do think kind of a weakness of Lord of the Rings is we spend so little time with like regular people at any level, where it's kind of like we're told all this bad stuff is happening, but we never actually see any of it. We don't actually see anyone like getting oppressed or like what like people's lives are like.
Not till the Scouring of the Shire, anyway.
Yeah, and even that kind of is a little like that doesn't quite feel like the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like Bree is kind of presented as this scary place as opposed to a place where just normal people live. So like way back in book 1. So
so the stakes I think can get a little muddy there sometimes, at least in like these first 2 books where it's like bad stuff's happening over there. It's really bad.
Yeah, it's sort of reported to us that the Westfold was burned, but we don't see it happen.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm not saying like we have to. It's just it's an interesting choice in terms of how he presents things.
Well, it's part of like because the narrator is not omniscient. Like it is this structurally it's an omniscient narrator, but it is limited to
the characters,
the person in front of us. And so it's like we have a Hobbit perspective, or we have, you know, whoever is kind of in control of the scene. It's not except for the occasional imposition of, and this is who Shelob is.
Right.
There's historical asides.
But we don't have like, and then by the way, here are these families in the Westfold whose homes were set on fire. Like we don't have this kind of the
kind of ground level perspective.
For some reason I don't know, I don't think there's a lot of that in the movies either, but do you remember that scene where like Gimli is telling Éowyn like how dwarves were made? He's like, there are some people that think they sprung out of the ground. And that feels like the most like small scale conversation, at least in the movies. But
and they do, and maybe this is an extended cut. Actually, I've never seen the theatrical cut of the Two Towers or the Return of the King.
There's the scene where like you see the mom send her kids off to the
families in Rohan.
No, that's what I was thinking of.
And you do see like some families in Helm's Deep who are like sending their children off to fight. But other than that, it's like very, very limited to the specific characters that we're dealing with.
I can see Peter Jackson being like, we need to see some normal people in the story.
Well, it kind of gets to what Claire was joking about at the very beginning, where it's like no dames.
We have Éowyn,
we have Arwen. Guess what? They're both perfect.
We don't have to get into it, but I have lots of thoughts about Éowyn. It's not that she's perfect. It's not that she's perfect.
I just mean like she's virtuous. She's she does the right thing. She's heroic. She's not like. There are no moms in Lord of the Rings.
There's no. I think Tolkien gets a much worse rap on women than he deserves. not perfect. He's not perfect, but I think he's not
Yeah.
as bad as people like to.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was more saying like he's not super interested in like the domestic in a way.
Yeah.
Only insofar as it's
that,
like a place to return to at the end of the journey.
Right.
I think that it's entirely possible that he just personally did not know very many women.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, yeah, it's like him and the
Catholic English academic.
Yeah, the Inklings. I don't know how many women were in the Inklings, but yeah.
I was too busy hanging out with C.S. Lewis, trying to convert him to Catholicism. So he could write some of the worst books ever.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to The Infinite Library. If you liked our show, we hope you'll subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the podcast app of your choice. It helps us a lot. If you want to follow us on social media, we can be found on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Infinite Library Pod. If you'd like to contact our team directly with episode ideas or feedback, you can email us at infinitelibrarypod@gmail.com. Our intro music is by Amos Legend in the Forest of Mayhem. Our outro music is by DJ Daggy Diggs, and our logo was created by Lars Noir.